Dear students, today we'll see the fifth part of ECD lab section, in which we are going to get introduced to what is packing, stocking, handling of components, and their electrostatic safety. We'll also see how to understand the data, that is the data specification sheets of components. We'll also see selection or criteria of components. We'll see what do we mean by soldering, what are the types of soldering, and what are the precautions we have to take while soldering. So let's start with today's topic. So here you can see, first we are going to see what is packing of electronic components, stocking of electronic components, handling of component, and their electrostatic safety. How you are going to save the component from electrostatic effect. Then second one is to understand the data sheets of all components. Third one is selection criteria of components. And fourth one will be soldering types and precautions. So let's start with the first one, packing. So if you go to see packing of electronic components, electronic packaging is the design and production of enclosure for electronic devices, which range from individual semiconductor devices to complete system such as mainframe computer. So here we are speaking from a component to a bigger electronic system. All should be enclosed properly. So that enclosing also is a design, is an art, that electronic packaging. Okay. Packaging of an electronic system must consider. So whenever you pack an electronic system, it should consider protection from mechanical damage, protection from cooling, protection from radio frequency noise emission, RF noise emission, and protection from electrostatic discharge. So these are important things what a packaging should protect your device or your component or your electronic system from. Okay, so this is how your electronic component should be packed so that it is not affected, it is protected from mechanical damage, cooling, radio frequency noise emission, and electrostatic discharge. Similarly, if you go to see stocking of electronic components, so here we can say that the only components that have special storage and handling requirements are things that are static sensitive, which is basically anything that is semiconductor chip. So anything which is made up of semiconductor material, okay, that can undergo a problem of electrostatic. So it will be static sensitive. Any charged body, if it comes near it, it can discharge through it, and then the components might not work properly. For example, an Arduino chip might get damaged from static electricity. So they are used to store in some sort of partially conductive plastic, either a bag or a tube or foam or something like that, so that electrostatic sensitiveness is reduced. That electrostatic effect will not damage the component. So that is how you have to stock the electronic component. Then handling of components. Now by handling, we mean that any operation that involves moving work from one place to another. If you're taking anything from one place to another, it is called as handling. All components used in the manufacture of hybrid devices have hard cases that appear to protect them from rough handling. Okay, so all the components will be having, most of the time, all the components will be having hard cases. The manufacturer will see that the upper case of the component is hard, so that it can be handled a little roughly. However, poor handling can cause internal damage. But still, if there is a handling problem, if the component is not handled properly, then it can cause internal damage, which is invisible. This internal damage can then cause electrical failure or reliability problems Then we'll go to see the main effect, what we are speaking up till now, that electrostatic discharge, ESD effect. Okay. Now, electrostatic discharge, that is ESD in short form, is one of the leading causes of failure in power modules and integrated circuits. A strong ESD susceptibility can generate damage in the device that reduces its performance or destroy the device. All MOSFET and IGBT power modules are very sensitive to ESD. These are some examples, but most of the electronic components and systems are very much affected by this common problem called as electrostatic discharge, which can also take place when a human touches a human being or touches a component or a system. So you can see this picture here. Whenever there is a touch, you can see a discharge happening. So here you can see the discharge which is happening. Now this discharge, that is the current, will go through the components here, and it can damage the components, it can damage the working of the system. The system can malfunction just because it was touched and some charge have gone through it. So it is called as electrostatic discharge. Now, what is this electrostatic discharge? When two electrically charged objects, such as human body and an electronic device. So here we will take this example only correctly. A human body and an electronic device come in contact with each other. Static electricity is discharged. This phenomena is called electrostatic discharge, ESD. ESD generated from the human body can be of the order of several thousand volts. This high voltage pulse enters the electronic device that is touched by the human, resulting in a malfunction or destruction of the IC circuits inside it. In order to prevent the destruction of a product or system due to the intrusion of ESD into an electronic device that was touched, it is necessary, this is important, it is necessary to install countermeasures, means measure which can protect components, countermeasures, the measures which can protect the components, or the ESD effect is suppressed or removed by those measures. Okay, so the component remains same. Clear? Now, what are the sources of ESD? All materials like insulators and conductors alike are sources of ESD. They are lumped together in what is known as the triboelectric series. They are lumped together in what is known as triboelectric series, which defines the materials associated with positive or negative charges. How can you prevent ESD? Okay, so how we are going to save a component from ESD? It's unlikely you can eliminate ESD completely from any site. Okay, it is not possible to make it 100% zero. However, experience has shown that the following guidelines are helpful. Number one, keep all synthetic materials at least 4 inches away from the electronic equipment. So whichever equipment or electronic component or device, whatever you are using, you keep all the synthetic materials at least 4 inches away from it, so that the charge particles will not get discharged through the components. Second one is, when cleaning printed circuit boards, use a spray labeled as non-static forming. Okay, so whenever you are cleaning printed circuit boards, the spray should be a non-static forming. So it should not form any static charges which will get discharged through the board or a component or the device. Number three, when troubleshooting electronic equipment, that is whenever you are seeing into a fault, always wear a static wrist strap. Always wear a static wrist. It is worn on a wrist of a human hand. Wrist strap that's grounded to the frame of the device. That is grounded to the frame of the device. So anything charging is there that will go through the frame of the device, not into the device. Okay. So that is grounded to the frame of the device. Also wear the wrist strap when handling printed circuit boards. Then number four, treat carpets and floors with compounds that reduce the buildup of static charges. Use static floor mats wherever necessary. Last point here, Make sure the grounding system for equipment has a low impedance for ESD currents to dissipate to an earthing reference. So all these things are precautions what you can take or how you can prevent the ESD effect. Now, ESD devices should be contained in a static protective bag, a simple prevention. It should be in a static protective bag or a container at all times during storage or transportation. Whenever you want to keep it somewhere or whenever you want to transport it from one place to another, it should be contained in a static protective bag or container. Now, it can be shown like this. So here on the left hand side, we have shown ESD shielding a container. So this will be a container in which you have kept this board, and this container will be your container which will save that board from your ESD effect. So it is ESD shielding container. You can also have our containers which are non-shielding, but shielding will be very important. Okay, shielding means it will not allow anything to affect the system or a components. Nothing will get discharged through the a component or the system. So it should be a ESD shielding a container. Okay. Then we'll see some examples of common ESD sensitive components. They include regularly used MOSFET transistors, CMOS devices, laser diodes, high precision resistors. So there are many components which are ESD sensitive and they have to be taken care whenever this ESD effect is going to damage them. Okay, so they have to be taken care. You have to see that nothing get discharges through it. Then we'll go to see what are data sheets. Now for every component, every equipment, every appliance, you will get a data sheet, a manual type. Okay, so data sheets are instruction manuals for electronic components. They explain exactly what a component does and how to use it. So the simple definition for data sheet is it is an instruction manual for electronic components. It explains what a component does and how to use it. This is the document that the manufacturer provides telling you, number one, the typical device performance, the minimum and maximum requirements and characteristics, what you can do to the device without harming it, suggested uses and hints. So most of these features, specifications, applications will be told in that document. Where do you find data sheets? Nowadays, you can find almost any data sheet on the internet, often in PDF Acrobat form. For example, say if you want a data sheet of IC LM555 from National Semiconductors, it is there on their website where you can type www.national.com. There you can get the IC number LM555 and then you can see the data sheet of that particular IC. So it will give a complete information. It's a complete manual for that particular IC. Now, what are the important things which the data sheets contain? The number one is summary. Number two is if there is any pinout diagram for your chip. Number three is detailed tables of electrical specifications in terms of voltage, current, power. Number four is graphs showing the paths, performance versus various criteria. Number five is truth tables. Number six is timing diagram, which operation is taking what timing. Next is extensive application information, usually for complex parts. Then we can have schematic examples. Then we can have packaging information. So all this information, all these points are mostly covered in your data sheets for components or devices or systems. Then if you go to see each of this point, the first point says summary. So in summary, we see specifications and functional block diagram. So here you can see specifications and here you can see functional block diagram. So in specifications, you can have features. Now here we have taken one example of analog devices here. Analog devices, in that we have digital accelerometer. Okay, and this is the number for it, ADXL345. Now in that we can get on the page features, we can get a shortcut in its applications. What are the applications? We can get a general or description about that, and we can get a functional block diagram here. So all these things are shown on a page where a summary of the device or the component or the system is done. Then we can have pinouts. If you're having an IC, then you can show a pin diagram like this: pin number 1, pin number 2, pin number 3, pin number 4, and what are the functions, what the functions are going to do, how that IC is going to look, whether it is a dual inline package as shown here. This is dual inline package, or you can have a quad package as shown here. Okay, so here all the pin descriptions can be given, which can called as pinouts. This can also be given in your data sheets. Then you can have tables of electrical specification where you can have absolute maximum ratings in terms of, like, say, now here we are speaking about a meter which can accelerate. So here you can have acceleration rating. You can give your voltage. Okay, you can give the digital pins rating, you can give other pins rating, you can use output shortcut circuit design, you can give temperature range, you can give power range, you can give storage temperature range. Okay, power hot temperature range and storage hot temperature range, and all these parameters you can see here. Similarly, you can have operating conditions are recommended. Okay, you can know that how much should be the VCC supply voltage, how much should be the high input voltage. Okay, so here you can see the high level input voltage, then you can see low level input voltage, then you can see what is the input voltage, then you can see output voltage. All those readings will be given here. Okay, and those readings you can refer and you can understand what are the details of electrical specifications for that particular component or device or system. Then you can have graphs. You can have typical performance characteristics shown in terms of graph, like input voltage range graph can be shown here, and input hot current graph can be shown. Okay, so it will be with respect to hot temperature or power supply. Okay, you can have a supply current graph, you can have a voltage gain graph. So any relations, any two relations are compared together on a graph, and their relation will be shown for a typical performances, whatever you want for that particular component or system or a device. Then you can also have truth tables, which will give you input output relationships and the functions. If the inputs are like this, what is the function? So here you can see this block is for input. So input you can give, this is one input, this clock is another input, this clear is input, this clock is input, this input. Now those inputs, what are the values of the inputs? And if those are the values of the input, then this type of function will take place. Like that, you can give combinations of many inputs here, and you can give combinations of many functions here which can take place. So that is nothing but truth tables, which will give you the input output relationship for a particular component or a device or a system. Then you can have timing diagrams, which will give as per your clock used in your system. Okay, so the clock used in your system, as per that, which function is going to take how many timings, how many clock cycles, that can be decided, which can give the access time for a particular application. So timing diagrams also are given in your data sheets. Then you can have application information. Say for example here I2C you have seen. Okay, so I2C is a interfacing whatever you are going to do, and for that, what is the application? The description is given here. Okay, and its parameter and limits and units are given here, and here you have shown a circuit diagram where I2C is connected to addresses. So like that, you can see the application information also in your data sheet for that particular component or device or system. Then you also have schematic examples. You can have mechanical considerations for mounting, how to mount them and all. Those instructions also will be given as shown here. Layout or considerations. Okay, these are schematic examples. Then you have typically single supply applications. Okay, so you can show some schematics, how the connections are made with that particular component or device or system. Then you can have packing information, how it is packed. Okay, so how the plastic is used, uh, plastic small outline package is used, okay, to pack the particular component or device or system. Then we'll go to the next point. Now this point will tell you how do we select a component. So what are the criteria while selecting a component for a particular application? So the number one is manufacturer. So you should know the manufacturer who is going to manufacture that component and his previous experience. So in that you can have application notes, reference design, software tools, technical support, design review support, etc. So you understand that which manufacturer, along with your practice or experience, you can understand which manufacturer is giving you a proper device or a component or a system. Second is application circuit or complexity. Third is electrical parameters like voltage, current, power, accuracy, response time, speed, resolution, etc. All those parameters you should see for a component or a device whenever you're going to select it. Fourth is mechanical parameters, its dimension, size, package, weight, etc. Fifth is a consideration with respect to manufacturing or testing. So what are the services are given by the manufacturer, who is the manufacturer, and what is his earlier experience. Okay. Then sixth is environmental parameters like temperature, humidity, pressure, vibration. Then you should also take care of the parameter which is called as long-term availability, its reliability for a longer time, or end of life, EOL factor, its lead time, its cost, from where to buy, fallback solution and assembly options, design reviews, prototype before you plan production. So all these points are important whenever you're going to select a component for a particular application or select a device or select a system for a particular application. Then those points, if you see in detail, manufacturers. So when you see that, select manufacturer wisely. Always consider a manufacturer who has good product document like an informative data sheet. So the manufacturer gives you a complete information about that particular component or system. Application notes. So its application notes should be very clear where all it can be used. Reference designs, evaluation board, support and support channels. So all this will decide that which manufacturer you are going to take, because a same a component or device can be manufactured by 2-3 companies, but from whom you are going to take, that will be decided by you only. And for that you should have this idea about its data sheet should be more informative, its application notes, reference design, evaluation board, support channel. Okay. Then second is application of circuit complexity. New parts need application, understanding, and many times the application circuits complexity drives the part selection. Then third is electrical parameters like voltage, current, power, accuracy, response time, resolution, speed. Okay, these are the core requirements. Example, for a resistor, you need to see its resistance value, or tolerance, or temperature coefficient, wattage, or power which can be withstand by this resistor. So all those things you need to see whenever you're going to select a resistor. Okay, so this is also a point while selecting a component. Then fourth is mechanical parameters like dimension, its size, package, weight, etc. Mechanical dimensions also play an important role in selecting of components according to your application. Then fifth is a consideration with respect to manufacturing or testing. Whatever part you select should not create an issue when you manufacture them in bulk or while testing. So always consider manufacturing and a testing process in mind while selecting a part. So always whenever you are selecting a component or device or a system, always keep in mind the manufacturer and its testing process. Sixth is environmental parameters like temperature, humidity, pressure, and variation. Environmental parameters are also very important, should be known beforehand and be considered carefully. So it depends in which environment you're going to use the particular component or device or system, and based on that, how that environmental parameter is tolerated by your component or other things, and what arrangements have been made for that. So that is also important. Then eighth is long-term availability or end of life, EOL. Whenever possible, select a component which has a pin compatible alternative. It has an alternative in terms of pin compatibility. It can match with other things, but that does not mean you compromise on critical specifications. Long-term availability is a big topic whenever you are selecting a component. So long-term availability is a big topic, means it comes on your experience. It comes to know as like which a device or which component or which system has a long term in your particular application that you can understand. Then lead time plays an important role. This can totally screw up your development roadmap if you miss considering it beforehand. Sometimes sample lead times are short, but when you try to buy a bigger quantity, lead times are higher. So be careful. If lead times are high and you don't have a choice of another part, you may need to keep some extra stock. This has an effect on your overall cost of the product. So here the lead time plays a very important role. Then 10th is cost. Everyone wants to have the best component at the most affordable cost. So the cost should be low and the component should be best. Don't compromise on quality if you're getting at a lower cost. Sometimes device cost more due to better performance, more power efficient, smaller package, more integration like optical isolation, ESD protection inbuilt with RS485 transceivers, etc. Better reliability. So consider overall value add rather than just the cost of a component. So you see the quality of the a component also whenever you see the cost. So that cost and quality both should correctly match. So even if it is little more in terms of cost, but its qualities are good, and if it is very good for your application, then you can go for it. Then 11th, from where to buy. This is a critical question. As mentioned earlier, it is always recommended to buy components from trusted sources, like directly from the manufacturer if possible, authorized distributors. It is not a good advice to buy from a shop, online or physical, where a genuinity of a component is not assured. So wherever you feel the component is genuine, there only you have to buy it. So mostly you have to buy from the manufacturer or by an authorized distributor. Fallback solution and assembly options. It is always a good idea to keep some fallback or assembly options if required for the new circuit you are designing, so that in case one circuit option doesn't work, you will have another possibility. This many times saves manual patchwork and redesign. Design reviews. Follow 3-level review process. First, always do a detailed self-review. Second, a review should be done by someone else than you in your organization. If possible, recommended, get it reviewed by an external experienced engineer or consultant if you don't have confidence. By doing reviews this way, your design, the part selection is getting questioned by multiple people, by many people, and chances of errors, effort time, loss in respinning the design would greatly reduce if you have a setup of a proper guidelines process for the review. Then 14th point is a prototype before you plan production. For a complex part selection, it is always advisable to test those parts either using the evaluation boards or by making a small board before including in the full design. Once the part is tested and performance is evaluated, it can be included in the full product design. Many companies do the full design itself, but then they are aware that they are taking the risk, and if some problem comes, they need to redesign and get it manufactured again. So take an informed decision on what is best for you before selecting the component or device or system. Then we'll go to see what is soldering. It's a very important function. So here, soldering is a process of joining two pieces of metal sheets by the addition of filler metal with a melting temperature below 450 degrees Celsius. The soldering materials are used in the soldering process called solder, which is made up of the alloy of tin and lead. So solder is made up of alloy of tin and lead, which you have to melt at a temperature below 450, and that melting solution will go and sit in the place where you want to join two things. Okay. So here the flux material is also used in the soldering process. It is made up of OS, zinc chloride and ammonium chloride. The function of flux, whatever you use, is not permitted the molten solder to wet and flow into the joint. Generally, lead and tin alloy are used in various compositions depending upon the use of the joint. Then we have soldering tools. Then what are the soldering tools we have in our soldering mechanism? So number one is soldering iron, number two is soldering station, number three is iron tips, number four is brass or a conventional sponge, number five is soldering iron stand in which you can keep your soldering iron, number six is the solder, and number seven is the helping hand which does this. Then you can see here in this picture, we have shown a soldering gun. So here you can see a soldering iron. So this is your soldering iron, which can be connected to electrical supply so that it can be heated. So this is heated, and here you have the point, the tip, which is going to touch. And this is the lead. This is the lead, which is here shown. This is the lead, which will be melted here at the point whenever you're going to join two things because of the heat, and that melted lead will join the connection. So it is a simple thing, but you should be accurate, and there is a procedure for soldering. Then you can see a complete things over here where you can see a stand, soldering stand. This is a soldering stand where in which you can keep your soldering iron because it is hot. It is hot. You can keep this soldering stand so that nothing else can be damaged by this. So this is your soldering iron in stand. This is your damp sponge. So here you can see you will be having a damp sponge. Then you will be having a solder. Solder is your lead like this. Then a board, which is a prototype board on which you can connect many components and other things, standard boards. Then you can have wire strippers, which can cut the wires. You can have solder braids. Okay. So all these things are your things which are which you should have while you're doing the soldering mechanism. Then the correct way of soldering is shown over here in this diagram. In one hand you can hold your lead. So this is the lead which is going to melt. Okay, and in one hand you can have your soldering iron. This is a soldering iron. So this is the point where you want to join two things. So this lead should be heated, properly melted, and the joint, at that joint you can put that melted lead, and then it will join the two things. Okay. So here again we have shown the tip of the soldering iron. So this is your soldering iron, and here you can see the tip of the soldering iron. These are the two things which you have to join, and here you can have a lead of the component. Now this is your component. Okay. Now here we have shown a component, and then here is your circuit board. This is your circuit board. You have made a hole in the circuit board here, and the component lead is taken on top. Okay, and you have to connect it to the copper lines over here. So here you can put your heat treatment for the lead, and then it can be put here so that that component connection is joined with the copper lines properly on the board. Then what is a good joint and bad joint? So you can see that volcano shape, if you are having a shape like this of the lead which you have melted for the point to join, then it is a good one. If you're having something like this, then it is not a good one. Okay. Then what is the workstation of your soldering system? So here you can see you are having a soldering iron here, soldering gun. Then this is a wire which goes. This you can put in this appliance where you can connect it to the electrical supply. You can on it and you can heat it. This is your stand. Okay. And in which you can keep your soldering iron whenever it is not in use, but it is heated. Okay. Then we'll go to see what are the types of soldering. So in soldering, basically we have soft soldering and hard soldering, but here we can define them as three types. Number one is soft soldering, number two is hard soldering or silver soldering, and number three is brazing. So what is soft soldering? It is used in sheet metal work for joining parts that are not exposed to high temperatures and are not subjected to extreme loads and forces. Soft soldering is also used for joining wires and small components. The solder, which is mostly composed of lead and tin, has a melting range of 150 to 350 degrees Celsius. A suitable flux is always used in soft soldering. Then what is hard or silver soldering? It employs solder which metal at higher temperatures and are stronger than those used in soft soldering. Silver soldering is a hard soldering method, and silver mixed with tin is utilized as a solder. The temperature of the various hard solder vary from about 600 to 900 degrees Celsius. The fluxes are mostly in paste form and are applied to the joint with a brush before heating. In hard soldering, a blowtorch constitutes the equipment. Blowtorch constitutes the equipment. Then we'll go to see the third one, brazing. These types of soldering metal use a very higher melting point than the metals used in hard and soft soldering. However, it is similar to hard soldering. The metal being bonded is heated as opposed to melting. Once both materials are sufficiently heated, you can then set the soldering metal between them, which melts and acts as a bonding agent. Then, what are the advantages of soldering? It is simple and economical process. Since it has done at a relatively low temperature, no metallurgical damage to the base metal. The soft soldered jointed can easily be dismantled by simple heating. Operator fatigue is less compared to the welding process. Then what are the disadvantages of soldering? The process is limited to the minimum thickness of 3 mm, 3 millimeter. The skilled operator is required. Strength of joint when compared to welding is lower. So as compared to welding, the strength of joint is lower. Then what are the applications of soldering? Soldering is used to join automobile radiator cores. It is used in plumbing. It is mainly used in electronic industries like radio, TV, and computers. It is used for joining wires and cables to lugs in electrical industries, and many other applications are there. Then what are the precautions you have to take for soldering iron? Never touch the element of the soldering iron because it is 400 degrees Celsius heated. Hold wires to be heated with tweezers or clamps. Keep the cleaning sponge wet during use. Always return the soldering iron to its stand when not in use. Never put it down on the workbench. Turn unit off and unplug when not in use. Then solder flux and cleaners. Wear eye protection. Solder can spit. Use rosin-free and lead-free solders wherever possible. Keep cleaning solvents in dispensing bottles. Always wash your hands with soap and water after soldering. Then lead exposure. Lead can give rise to serious chronic health effects. Exposure will primarily be through accidental ingestion from your skin. You have to wear gloves if directly handling the solder. Limited fumes may be generated by soldering. Then rosin exposure. Rosin, that is colophony, arsine, is a resin contained in the solder flux. Flux generates the visible fumes seen during soldering. Exposure to rosin can cause eye, throat, and lung irritation, nose bleeds, and headaches. Repeated exposure can cause respiratory and skin sensitization, causing and aggravating asthma. Rosin is a serious occupational health hazard. Thank you, students.